I didn't know we were doing that now.
Now we could. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the second edition of Late Night Tea, Tacoma Tea with LP. We got Jonathan Jackson back with us again. I am energized. We both just came from the Juneteenth celebration, and it was a celebration. You know, I've been a couple times, and this year by far best year. Crowds for days, and just the feeling of peace in that crowd. You know, it's such a big crowd, but still having that feeling, peace and community. It was great.
I agree. My only grievance, before I talk about all the good things, was that the food lines were so long.
Oh, every year.
I couldn't. We've got to streamline that system somehow.
Yeah. Tickets or something, right?
Tickets or tokens or money, people taking money in a different place somehow, and then the kitchens can just pump out the food because I mean, we couldn't even get anything to eat, and there were so many good things that I wanted to try.
Yeah, and there needs to be like a sampler, you know, take this real quick so you can have a little bit of everything, because there is just about anything you can imagine there, right? There's all sorts of stuff.
Even the aguas frescas was completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
I literally got the last, like, they must have had like 18 of those jugs of different flavors. I got the last one of the last one.
Yeah.
And I mean,
It looked good. I saw what you had.
Yeah.
I was jealous.
It was good. It was good. And this was my first one.
Yeah. So was it all that you thought it would be?
I was pleasantly surprised. First of all, I always feel more comfortable in black spaces, and today it was just almost a completely black space. It was great. That part was wonderful, and I got to thinking actually about I think we're going to talk a little bit more about neighborhood safety today. But I wanted the thing that I wanted to ask you was, you were there for most of the day. How safe did you feel at the event?
You know, I'm going to be honest, like I was a little bit hesitant just because of all the craziness that's been happening, you know, nationally. I was hesitant to want to be myself in a big crowd and my children in a big crowd. But then I thought, like, I don't know if they try it here, you know, with who's here. So I when I was there, I didn't feel any kind of insecurities about that. I felt safe. I felt, again, just kind of like surrounded by love and community. And there was laughter, there was joy in this crazy, crazy time, and it's what I think is what we all really needed right now.
I felt the same. I thought the safety level, the community level, all of those factors were really, really high.
And where we see like 2 cops, it wasn't like cops everywhere. Like, we took care of each other.
Yeah, very, very low police presence, mostly because it just wasn't necessary. People were just eating, drinking, enjoying music, seeing their friends.
Yeah.
It was great running into people that, you know, you haven't seen for a few weeks or, you know, I do have to say though, that we did have a conversation before we went about sort of just making sure that the safety protocols are followed in case immigration does show up and try to throw people in a van. Make sure the cell phone is charged, make sure, you know, that everybody has their numbers down, and safe meeting points. I was with five kids. And so as soon as we entered the park, we were like, okay, big yellow van, that's where we'll meet if, you know, something, you know, happens or anybody gets lost. In past years, I might not have been so, that might not have been so foremost on my mind, like an actual safety protocol.
Yeah, Yeah.
Not because of the people who were there, but because of the people who might show up in terms
Right. That wasn't the people there wasn't even that wasn't even a thing for me.
not even
It was thinking about people, yes, ICE, but then also you see a lot of the white supremacists just feeling so empowered to harm folks that are in cultural spaces and safe spaces. And so that was another concern on my mind.
they
But
weren't here today.
they weren't. No, at least they didn't make themselves known. If they were there, they didn't do nothing. So, but I guess that's kind of a, a segue for me to kind of shout out, I guess, Councilmember Diaz, which she's another one of the at-large folks, and I didn't see her today, but she had sent out like she wrote an op-ed in the News Tribune about kind of what we were talking about last week with hey, what are the places that we can reach out to and what should we do. So I was happy to see that she had done that. And I'm also seeing just and also Councilmember Jamaica Scott. I read her newsletter that she sent out last time, and I saw, I think the community, the knowledge that community input needs to be strong right now is there, because I see her doing like an office hour, and she had a couple of other things for people to get in contact with her. So I just had to shout out those two because we love to see it. We know that that's what we need.
Absolutely. We got a really powerful testimonial from Jamaica Scott last week, and we'll have that up on the social medias post haste.
Yeah.
All right. I think I had to get my headphones on so I don't start shouting into the microphone here.
All right.
I'm also noticing that because of the sun, I am almost the same tone as my jacket. But
I was just gonna say, I think I might have to like retake my pictures or something, because I was white before today, and now I get pretty tan when I get out in the sun, get some sun. So
well, down south they call it light bright, so you just have to live with the light bright part of it. But I do, one other thing about today that I found great was I felt more at home wearing my Black Empowerment T-shirt than I do typically out and about in sort of regular Tacoma, and I think that part of the safety also. And again, I live in Hilltop. That's not. I don't live, in a predominantly white neighborhood, but still, that was a space today where I felt completely comfortable just being myself and wearing my, Black leftist T-shirt today, and that kind of safety matters too.
absolutely, it's a thing with, we're celebrating Juneteenth, right? And we're celebrating the history of freedom, but what does that mean today to us today? And that's a great example, Jonathan, with being free to express yourself, being free to celebrate who you are and your culture without fear. That's freedom.
Indeed. And the space was really clean. There wasn't like trash going on, and you didn't get the feeling that like it was just chaos. Like everybody was looking after the park. The kids were in a field next door. There must have been 75 kids over there playing soccer, basketball. The music was popping. Like, hey, I couldn't have asked for, the weather cooperated.
Perfect. Yes. We were praying and it worked.
So let's talk a little bit about before we get into neighborhoods. Let's I have my tea, and it's in my Super Daddy-O mug that I got for some holiday. I don't think it was this Father's Day, but
did you have a good Father's Day?
we did, thank you. It coincided with my oldest birthday, so this year I stepped aside on the Father's Day and let her have her day. But yeah, we had a good one.
Shout out to all the fathers
Indeed.
As well, and single mamas out there.
Indeed, single moms too. As a son of a single mom, I always make sure my mom is celebrated on both days. Okay, so I have my tea. We're doing tea tonight. Let's talk about the the No Kings. So do you have any word about that? I'm actually literally asking, like, what happened, because I did not get a sense. I didn't hear about anything on the local news. This is kind of one of those news gaps that we were talking about last week, where we
Mm-hmm.
don't have proper community built up. We can't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, let me just, without droning on, let me just say we were really busy that day,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Go.
hey, Aries, we were really busy that
Single
day.
mom.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, somebody's going to come in the door any minute. Not with like busy, like going to the grocery store, but we had like kids stuff to do,
Mm-hmm.
commitments, like we couldn't go out.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear word one about what happened. I mean, somebody said, "Oh, it went really well. It was, peaceful," or what have you. But do you have any sense about what happened?
Yeah. I think that's, I'm lucky to have folks that I, went and were present, and I knew some of the folks that spoke on that day. And so I didn't see it on the, for one, I don't watch the news because I know there ain't nothing on there for me, but that's where I saw it. I saw it on their Facebook feeds and, all of their social media, and just the crowds, and that's where I got the numbers of it being, and I think it was somewhere around 3,000 folks or something at People's Park. So people, Tacoma showed up, and I'm just on this high right now because off of that, off of today, and this is how it should always be. This is how it should always feel. We should always be showing up like this. And I was my father's celebration of life that day, so I didn't get to participate as much as I wanted to, but to see everyone that did, like almost everyone I knew showed up, and showed out. I was so proud of my city.
Absolutely. And do you think it's safe to say that when people feel safe, that they will show up in cases like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it probably helped them to feel a little safer because there were, officials there. There were, big names. We had, state senators and county council members and stuff. And so, if they can show up, it's probably going to be a safe environment for you to be able to show up. So that's important.
I wonder if what the policing was at that. I mean, what we just mentioned, what made the Juneteenth festival today so cool is it was not over policed.
Yeah, yeah.
Over policing is a problem, particularly among, in a bigger sense, neighborhoods of color, working class neighborhoods, and then very particularly Black neighborhoods. Are over policed habitually. Yeah. Now we're seeing, Hispanic and Latino neighborhoods being, I don't know if over policed is even the word for it, right?
Yeah.
It's far beyond that. Terrorized, I think.
I think that's the word.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think you're spot on. I think, I don't think most of us are anti-security, and we want folks there when we call to take care of things when we need that help. What we don't need is when we are in these safe spaces with our communities, to have that. It feels like surveillance when there's a little bit too much of that. And what we saw today again was just people taking care of each other. People asking each other questions as to, where's the garbage, and it was just, there was no need. And I think you can accomplish that. Yes, we did it in a park full of thousands of people today, but I think you can accomplish something similar on a city level when you create that kind of community on a city level. And there was the One Tacoma plan that the city I guess they're going to vote it in, I think this next week on Tuesday, the city council. So this is the city's plan for the next 25 years, right? And one of the sections in there that I'm particularly interested in is like the neighborhoods section, because to me, community and neighborhoods that are connected is the way to solve a lot of these issues that we have. But there's talk about different things that can be done, but there's maybe not enough talk about the people element. I'm pretty proud of, they did a lot of great work with that. They did do a lot of community outreach. What I maybe would have liked to see, and something that keeps happening in Tacoma, is centering maybe communities of color and community more marginalized folks in that work. Yes, we have issues everywhere, but the communities and the neighborhoods that need the most help are going to be communities of color. They're going to be marginalized folks. And so, yes, they did great outreach across the city. But could we have pinpointed those communities that these types of things are going to affect the most? And I say that not thinking of the other communities outside of those. We have, the way that I think about it is, it's all connected, right? What happens in East Tacoma is going to affect what's happening in North Tacoma. So the only way to address the problem is to focus on these neighborhoods that aren't getting the attention. And we can't do that if it's a even outreach across the city. Like, there needs to be special attention in these spaces.
Special attention that does not mean over policing, surveillance, etc. Do you think that crime reduction is a successful metric, something that let me ask this in a more open way. What do you think about the metric of crime reduction?
It's funny because I know, like, metric wise, Tacoma is doing better year over year with crime. But if you ask, when we're going to the doors and talking to folks, you ask them, do they feel safe, or do they feel that there's a lower crime? And they don't. And I think it's across the city, because even the people that maybe don't live with it every day, they work, they play in places where these things are affecting them. So it's a feeling. Tacomans don't feel safe. And so how do we influence that and improve that for folks?
Do they feel safe, though? Is the feeling that I had a very interesting talk with my cousin earlier today who lives in Los Angeles, and he says that he notices he's just going out of the house less right now. Do you think that getting out of the house, and the online parlance would be touching grass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Tacomans don't feel safe when they are out and about in Tacoma, or is it a general sort of abstract feeling that develops through sort of electronic discourse, whether that be TV, your device, online on your computer, or whatever?
Yeah.
That like what's the balance there? Like, I guess the question is for people who don't feel safe, do you think that there are significant episodes throughout the week that they're going out in Tacoma and being like, wow, I don't feel safe here? Because I would love to know where, like, where those are and when that's happening.
Yeah. I'll say it's nuanced. I don't want to dismiss the folks that are in some of these areas that I know about that do have more crime issues than others. But from what I've seen, it's a perception thing for a lot of folks. Yes, there's the real threat of coming from like outside of our city right now, with ICE coming in, with whatever the federal government's going to be throwing at us. But internally, I'm not hearing that people are afraid or feel unsafe with like their neighbors. I am seeing, people that they don't know as much, and maybe some of like the homeless population that they don't know. It makes them feel unsafe, but is that, we have to think about, what is that feeling rooted in? And a lot of it, I think, is, we need to humanize some of these folks, for one, and realize, they are people, they need our help. Like, we are part of the problem and part of the solution, when it comes to those folks. But then also, was it just to, okay, so I was somewhere and the lady was like saying where she lived, and she's like, oh, I guess it's technically Hilltop. But she didn't want to be associated with living in Hilltop because there's this kind of negative connotation with that for her. And then it was like, oh, but I don't go through there, I just drive straight through, I don't stop there. But you and I live here, there's nothing wrong with Hilltop. Like, I feel safe walking down the street just fine. And my white neighbors, my brown neighbors, same thing. But it's
all pretty much all times
perception.
of the day and night too.
Yeah.
It's not like we have an informal curfew, like, oh, don't take a walk after midnight. It's not like
No.
that.
No.
I think Tacoma suffers, from reputation.
Yeah.
Interesting, and so does Hilltop. If you see discourse, if you're online and somebody posts something about Tacoma, and you know, I don't know why I do this, but frequently I'll go down to the comments just to see like what people are talking about. Inevitably, they'll
That's
talk about,
cool.
oh no, to
Yeah.
Compton or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's almost become kind of an inside joke among Tacomans online to say, yeah, it's terrible here. Don't come, stay wherever you're at. Because I have to say, we don't live in a utopia, but it is so much better than almost any city of this size that you can imagine.
Yeah, I think
Truly.
so too. Yeah. And we want to keep it that way.
We
So
sure do. We sure do. And we want to fix, we want to continue to fix and be progressive about issues. So again, we don't get caught back in a loop of going, because the economy, fluctuates, right? And we want to make sure that Tacoma kind of at least stays, and if not grows during these periods where the economy is fluctuating at such a
yeah.
rapid rate.
But we talk about, we're talking about wanting Tacoma to kind of stay Tacoma. Um, and the way to do that, though, is to make sure that the people that live here benefit from that growth that you're talking about. Like, yes, we want that growth, but the way to address some of these crime issues, the way to address some of these instability issues with people not being able to find work or being able to afford groceries, and all of that is solved if we take care of each other and we grow our economy to work for us. That is what is needed. There could be people growing food here in Tacoma, and you keep the dollar here when your neighbor buys that food from you. You have a fair wage job, and you're able to afford this affordable housing, and you don't have to go nowhere. And then if it's a rental, the money can benefit, if it's owned by somebody local, that money benefits our neighborhood. It's all about circulating those resources and those benefits within the community, and that's where we grow, and that's where we keep Tacoma, and that's where we add that stability.
Well said. And I think in terms of crime, if there was one thing that I would love to be able to teach out is that people who commit crime, or people who sort of get caught up in violations, they're part of our community too.
Mm-hmm.
And to deny that is just it's just not really that ethically correct. Like, because anybody can fall into some, hard times. A lot of times people have mental health issues.
Yeah.
And it's not just about sort of substance abuse or what have you leading to crime. Mental health plays a part in it. Poverty plays a huge part in it. And poverty, and as we know, poverty and mental health go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
So thinking of when we're talking about crime and feeling safe, thinking of sort of, and I'm going to put this in big quotes, criminals as part of our community is something that really can be taught out, and there might be some resistance to it, but even just saying it, oh hey, we got a nice. Okay, I want to get back. Yeah. I want to get back to the plan for a second before we move on. So I don't know who drafted the plan. I'm sure you have, and if you want to sort of teach out on that, that would be great. Sort of how the plan comes about, who has a voice in it. Because the question that I have is, who gets to define what safety looks like?
Sherry's right on it. Yes. So who gets to decide what design will help make us feel safer? What
Right.
And so that there's a lot of these committees and stuff that I think folks just don't know exist. I didn't know it existed before I got involved more in politics. So we do have a planning committee, and it's basically a volunteer committee of folks, but they are appointed by the city council. And what they do, they basically handle everything that has to do with planning. And if it's like permits and the different ordinances around that, and what we can build, what we can't, zoning, all of that stuff. All of those go through planning commission, and they study these things with this particular plan. Like I was mentioning before, they did a ton of outreach across the city to get community input, and then they hold a public meeting in that, and it's basically the planning commission is one of the biggest, I'd say, most active committees that influence our daily lives. Some of the other committees all of the committees are great. We have like a refugee and immigrant committee. We have all sorts of committees. But this one, like, they do a ton of work, and then what they put together goes in front of the city council, and city council says, just like they did with the charter review committee work, city council says, yeah, we like this plan, or hey, can you tweak this, or this kind of, and then they vote it in or they don't vote it in. So right now they're in the process of, they did a public hearing on it. They've done like their first review of the plan, and then I believe they are voting on it this Tuesday. And the plan touches on everything, like all of the things that will happen over our city in the next 25 years. The environmental strategies, the design strategies, the economic development strategies, all of that is in there. So I encourage folks to definitely check it out if you can. I think it's like a 900-page. It's pretty long, but look at the table of contents and find what interests you. Don't have to go through the whole thing. Yeah. Or tune in, to the city council meetings and get the cliff notes, because they do a presentation on them too. But yeah, so that's where we're at now with that.
What's interesting is being tuned in with what you're doing over the past 6-8 weeks or so. By the way, how long do we have till August 5th? We've got, I think it's about 6 weeks. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. 6.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Just reminding people that's the primary date. But being tuned into what you're doing over the past few months, I am like a test case example of somebody who is pretty astute politically, understands a lot of nuance about how things work in terms of that. But I have no idea how a city works. I have lived all over the country. It would be tough to count all the cities I've lived in on two hands, big, small, and in between. And I still, to this day, have no idea how a city runs. And I don't think I'm an outlier on that. No. I think that most people don't.
Most people don't want to know, because you shouldn't necessarily if you're voting the right people in, you shouldn't have to know all the ins and outs and pay attention to. I mean, democracy kind of demands that we do that, but people shouldn't have to know, I think, as much as they need to know now. Like,
Well, I don't necessarily want to know how the sausage is made, but I do think that in many ways, just as a general political principle, you should pay attention to things that affect you more on a day-to-day
yeah,
basis,
yeah. And
right?
it should be easy to do that though. So there's a couple elements there, right? There's the apathy around people thinking what they do and say isn't going to affect anything. So why would I care to learn about this? There's the access issue with a lot of the information. It's like, where do I even go to learn about what's happening in my city and this topic that I care about?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of reasons I can understand why people aren't, but we don't have that luxury anymore. And I think we need leaders that understand that and are willing to work on that and make sure that the community is tuned in as much as possible. Like, the only way forward out of this mess is an informed and empowered community.
And let's I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but picking up on how you ended there, one of the important things is to pay attention to voices of people who have been traditionally excluded
Mm-hmm.
in the process, right? And ultimately, when we're talking about equity, what we're really talking about is sort of a repair of things that need to be repaired, of people who have traditionally been excluded, gaining some power in the process, and at the same time trying to change the system.
Well, can
Right
we
now,
talk about that for a minute?
well, we
Ex-
can, but I want to make sure before we get into it. This is my point, though,
yes.
because all of those things that I just said are really easy to say. I had no trouble saying any of that. Boy, it just flowed right out of my mouth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think anyone, actually, if they had the words in front of them, if they wanted to, they could say it. But I think that what I wanted to ask you about, though, and press you a little bit on, it's about a little bit more than just saying it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, for one, I want to highlight how our language has changed a bit around that, right? We used to say equality, but
Mm,
then we switched over to saying equity, and we did that for a reason because it means two different things, right? Equity is we're paying attention to those who have the least among us, right? The ones who need the resources the most. We pay attention to them to bring them up, and sometimes that means they get more attention. Sometimes that means they get more resources, but that is what's going to equal things out. So like you're saying, that word equity these days is just thrown about and what people are actually saying is equality, because that's not that evening out is not what's happening. um and so, but then again, you look at these things as far as like, this is great to have a plan in Tacoma. And I'll tell you, you can go back. I don't think everybody knows how many plans and how many studies Tacoma has done around all of these things in the past. We do them every year, a couple of years, and this is money and resources going towards these plans. But what are the steps to make sure that these plans and all of these great ideas that we have come to fruition? There hasn't been a ton of follow through, and you get the excuse of, hey, there's not enough budget or resources available to do these things. There could be. This is all a choice. We need to
mhm.
find There's ways to find the resources in the budget. There's ways to take it away from the things that aren't working and put it towards the things that we need. So yes, we
Let
need
me
to
pick.
move
Let
away
me.
from that.
Sorry for interrupting. We need to move away from what?
Move away from saying things and not acting on those things.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that in some ways, just like equality, just like the dreaded DEI, do you think it's something that somebody can say, check a box, and then move on
That's what we've
without
allowed
doing
people to
anything?
do.
Sorry.
That's what we have allowed. I think so far we've been entertained and had our ears tickled by folks saying, hey, this is what I'm about. But I encourage people to look into what people have actually done in the past, the work that they're doing. That was one of the dating advice that I got from a friend one time was,
Uh-oh.
This guy they said that they were going to do all of these sweet things, and they said they were all about, I like the guys who are interested in community. I like the people, that's my thing. But they're like, okay, but what do their actions show? You have to look at that evidence. So please date your candidates. Like, look at what they've actually done and look at where they're at right now and their plans for the future. Is it the status quo that they're going to continue to try and push? Because that is not going to cut it anymore. We need something different. And if that's what we're seeing, don't just vote them in because you see they're supported by this other person or this other person. Like, do your research. Just because your mom recommended this guy or this girl, like, you got to double check. You got to look into that, right? So
we've got time too. We've got 6 weeks before the primary. And, if you value consistency, showing up, if you value somebody who doesn't just say the buzzwords, but actually asks tough questions, if you value somebody who wants community accountability, who actually, wants to make sure that that's going on, right? Wants to be held accountable. You've got 6 weeks now to actually see who you feel is doing that.
Yeah.
One of the things that right wingers are good at is saying things that make people feel uncomfortable. And one of the things that left wingers, progressives, are not comfortable doing currently is saying things that make people feel uncomfortable. We attack each other for it, and it's a shame because that's how progress gets made, right?
That is. And that's again, I think where you hit it right on the head. That's, people are craving authenticity and they're craving real, and dancing around sensitive subjects or trying to save people's feelings is not real. Like, we need to be adults and we need to be able to talk these things through and have respect for each other, that, hey, I'm going to disagree with you sometimes, but that is what's healthy. And having a healthy conversation around that is what Tacoma needs us to do. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about our community and what we can do for them.
Okay, so let's have an uncomfortable conversation. So,
okay,
when people say that they want safe neighborhoods, what do you? We've talked about sort of what the ideal of that is, but let's talk about sort of what they also could mean. Are there racisms? Are there classisms involved in people saying they just want? Is there NIMBYism involved in those things?
There could be all sorts. So again, I don't want to discount folks that are actually in these situations where they feel insecure, but there is there can be a perception and a bias involved in some of these folks. And what I think the solution to that is, how often does the North End or have to care about what the East Side's doing? How often does the East Side have to care about what the North Side's doing? A little bit more, because those are usually our employers and that are living over there. But my job as a citywide council member is to bring the city together. We have our district reps that are great at handling, the issues within the districts. It is my job to consider those things as well, but mostly to, hey, this is what this side is asking for. This is what this side is asking for. How do we make each other care? Because there's that perception, and it's an issue. And if they don't know anybody in this other neighborhood, that's just going to continue to exist.
Indeed. And we can't, I mean, we're not denied, when community gets denied, that's when those others. We don't, we want a safe neighborhood. We don't want those people around. And
Yes.
even though people don't enunciate that, almost nobody, unless you've got a microphone in your face and you're a national politician, you don't really say those things, right? But
Mhm.
they are lurking there. And I think the more we name the harm, the more that we talk about it, the more we can eventually, come together. It's not a magic fix, but it can happen.
It has to, yeah. That brings up another thing that I heard today. There was one of the people I met today brought up that, they didn't come. She was a white lady, and she's like, she didn't come to Juneteenth last year because she felt like she was trying to be respectful, and like this wasn't her space, and I respect that. But also, somebody else told her, like, no, like we need you to, how are you going to understand what's happening in this community if you're keeping away from that? And so there's a balance there, but there needs to be more collaboration and understanding, and we can't just wish for these things to happen. Like, we have to orchestrate them. We have to design our cities in order to facilitate those relationships. There needs to be things in the east side, in the south side, that attract folks from all over the city so they can, see how amazing these people are. And, these are the people that make our city runs off of, right? Like, these are the people who are working class folks that, without them, Tacoma's nothing. And so bringing folks together, whether that's working on a project together, whether that's, it could be even in disagreement, it could be, hey, I have this view and I have this view, but how often are those people in the same room together discussing that out? It just doesn't happen. And we need to make those environments happen.
We live in such an incredibly diverse city that yes, I think the possibility is definitely there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even just sharing the highlights of today's event would go a long ways towards somebody saying, "Oh, well, maybe I'd like to go to that next year,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or there was an Asian food festival like last week, or whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love a good food festival, but
Yeah, I do too.
but again, those lines, this, like, I don't know, the people, you have to realize that most people, what's your maximum for a line on a food truck? How long are you willing
You're
to?
stuck on those lines, John.
Look, I'm about boots on the ground improvements.
I'll
We all
put that
want.
on my list.
I mean, we want safety, but we also want to be able to get a
What
food
food?
truck. We want.
One lady had a great solution. Like, she was going out and she brought her cart and, like, lemonade here, lemonade.
That's true.
And I think that's a
I saw
great,
that.
it's a great example of how innovation and creativity can solve a problem. And that was just on a micro level, but man, let's take that and blow it up and use it.
Oh, yeah, and that's a very developing nation tactic. Like, whenever you arrive at a tourist spot, you'll see people wandering around with like new cups on their thing, and they have whatever, lemonade or water or whatever, and then they'll sell you a cup right then and there. Those
So
types
what's
of,
the steps there? It's recognizing a need,
yeah.
right? It's understanding, hey, this is my audience. These people will probably buy it if I do it this way. It's, hey, there's this problem over here. They're not getting access. It's a beautiful example of what needs to happen in Tacoma.
It is. It's innovation, and we all
Mhm.
have small improvements, and that there are the big ones, but then there's also sort of the day-to-day small improvements that I would like to see. So, for example, I would love to have a Black-owned cafe that, or several, right? I know that there's one or two maybe, but like those should be in a lot more neighborhoods,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Black-owned third spaces.
yeah,
Asian-owned third spaces,
yeah. And that's
right?
what you get when you
Latin-owned third
consider,
spaces.
yeah, you consider, again, the people over profit. Like, I'm thinking about, our own block here, on MLK, and like, how many, I love my cafes, I love our cafes, but we need other things too, right? But I'm thinking, it's bringing people in because that's what that's good business for folks, but there's little consideration in what people here actually need? How do we make this a 15-minute city where people can walk to all of the things that they need, childcare, groceries, all of the things? How do we do that? But if we're just going to continue to allow the same type of business to come in from outside the community. And so there's ways to look at that and to take care of that. That is in the plan that we should look at that. But that's just the first step. It's saying, hey, pay attention to this, but we need to do more than pay attention. We need to develop ways to like, no, let's get what we need into these communities.
Yeah, I have noticed that I'm in my car a little more often than I would like here. When we moved here, I thought that it would just be walking and riding a bike, and I wasn't. I'm never optimistic for American public transportation, uh, but I do find that, like, even for things like I got to run to the dry cleaner. I got to Hilltop is a bit of a food desert, even though we have Safeway. I don't know. The vibe in there is a little trippy.
The
So,
tiniest Safeway you've ever been in. Yeah.
you know what? First of all, I'm glad that they're there.
Yes.
Because in a lot, let me tell you something. In
Don't go anywhere.
a lot of urban environments, and I'm using urban in the colloquial sense here. You don't even have a Safeway. You have corner stores only, bodegas only, and so at least the Safeway has stayed there, but it is over policed. It does have there's a strange vibe in there, just from the way it's laid out and the staff. It just you go over to one in Proctor or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, this is much different than that, right? But
But
so
that brings up sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
no, not
That
at
brings
all.
up the idea of ownership, and what would happen if we had the same kind of Safeway that Proctor has? People would take pride in that, and people take care of things that they take pride in, and so a lot of the times I think, like, if you're looking at it from a pure profit motive, like, people aren't willing to make that investment. But the city can subsidize things like that and make sure that those things can happen, because we can't keep waiting. Like, we have to take those first steps, and then that's when people are going to do the buying, and then you have that security in this place that we all need in our community. But the steps need to be reversed, in my opinion.
I mean, if it's 8, 9 o'clock, and I need some cayenne pepper, right? I gotta say, I'm more inclined to drive up to Proctor.
Mm.
I am.
Well, for
Rather,
one, they'll probably have it. Like, you
well,
don't
yeah,
know if they're going to
that
have it here.
number two, it might not be behind a lock, or
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah.
Number three, I don't like that camera. I don't know if they still have that, but for a long time at night they had a camera in the parking lot. Now, I
Mhm.
don't know if that was Tacoma Police or Safeway or some sort of a thing, but we're getting back to the same old thing. It's about the surveillance. The last thing I'm concerned about is, like, the folks of the neighborhood. I just don't feel that comfortable going over there.
Yeah,
It's just not that, I mean,
not
it put,
welcoming.
yeah, it's not welcoming.
Mm-mm.
And when something's not welcoming, you tend to get reaction from people, in the community or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's underrated. I think that's not paid attention to enough, where it's, we need those people aren't going to care about this old rundown place. And you're
Yeah,
going to continue to it's going to circulate to continue to have this issue of being uncomfortable. Yes, the way that it is now, yes, you need that security. You need that, there's a big problem there with theft and all of that. But if you created this other space that was safe and welcoming and busy, and brought in folks from all different types of backgrounds, that wouldn't happen. It solves itself, and that's, again, a micro example of what we need to do on a larger scale.
I mean, just imagine if Safeway, for example, if the city could convince Safeway to invest in a community center that also lived on their parking lot, like right in the corner there, opened up the storefront, no more locks, all of those kinds of things, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
change the environment, change
Mm-hmm.
how things are being thought of, right? Rather than
Mm-hmm.
this, like, it's like this really walled off institutional place, right?
Yeah.
That, um,
Let's give
that,
people what they need for one, so that they don't need to, do what they're doing, right? To steal stuff. Let's do that. Let's create these environments that welcome these folks in, where they feel like they're a part of it and they have ownership. We know the solution. At least I know the solutions. We just got to get it done.
mhm.
Hmm.
But that, that neighborhood transformation, it's block by block in some cases, and it's a lot of work. Again, something that right wingers traditionally have been very good at, and left wingers are less good at it. Like the day to day, boots on the ground, organizing, proselytizing, getting people involved. For the last 50, 70 years, right wingers have been really good at that. And we're
You know
seeing the
why
results
though,
now.
Jonathan? Is they're usually organizing in their churches. They
That's right.
have places for them to go
Yep.
and do these things.
That's right.
Not saying that, people on the left don't go to church, but a lot of those folks, it's not combining all of the things of life. On the right, they're talking about politics, even though they might not, maybe shouldn't be, but they're talking about politics in those spaces. They're talking about, what they like, what they don't like. And it's not just a spot to worship. It's basically a community centers for these folks everywhere. And imagine if the left had spaces like that, and even like secular places where everybody felt welcome, what that could accomplish.
Yeah. And a mix of parochial and secular all usually does work, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Can we look at a few comments here? What is that urban? What is that? Urban Legends of Tacoma. Andy said. That's a good one.
Yes, we have them. I learned of one. I grew up on the east side, but I wasn't in Salishan. A lot of my friends were in Salishan. But I heard of, I can't remember if somebody knows the name of the urban legend of the guy in the woods. I can't remember what the name was, but yeah. So it also depends on where you grew up around here. But we have our own urban legends, neighborhood by neighborhood.
So how are we going to get people to turn out on August 5th? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So right now we're knocking doors, and we're hoping that folks will join with as much as they can. I'll start sending out more dates. I send out a weekly newsletter to let folks know when we're going out. And so if you're not subscribed to that, you can either comment in the your email, or you can hit me up at the what's going below there at Latasha for Tacoma.com, and get signed up for that, so the other thing is we're in a huge push right now to try and get funding for mailers. Those things are not cheap. So we're to get as many recognition at as many doors as possible for the ones that we can't hit, to get the name out there, to get this movement, the knowledge out there, and let folks know, hey, like, change is possible. And it can't, you're not going to do everything through politics, but we need to do more through politics. And so we need as many folks that can show up on August 5th, the primary, to get us past that, so that we can get into the November general. But first hurdle is August 5th.
August 5th, getting everybody out. It's so important.
Absolutely.
I think, the social media presence too. I think somebody just at either what event, there's so many events now, it's hard to keep track, but somebody
Right.
said that they were specifically there because they saw you, either on TikTok or Instagram. So, sometimes it's not possible to knock on every door, but we are trying to raise awareness as much as possible through
Yeah.
all the channels, right?
Yes, we're trying to make it more accessible to folks and attract the younger crowd as well. And so that's done through social media. And so if you like, follow, share the
Yeah.
videos as well, that's a way to spread the word.
So, Okay, so the goal here is to have a city, and not just a city. The goal is to have Tacoma.
These
Um, right.
this is very Trumpish. Sorry.
Be, yeah. Be to uh, the T word. Let's yeah. um, we want to live in a place where everyone feels safe, right?
Yes.
That's kind of why we've spent a couple of weeks on that. We'll probably still even touch upon it next week a little bit. But one of the things I think that happens is that um, sort of safety, policing, crime numbers, and stuff get outsourced to experts, oftentimes even to the police department, without any sense of like community or the people in these neighborhoods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's kind of one of the reasons why I think your agenda is spot on, because it roots itself in depending on people and in these communities.
Just have to have a little faith in ourselves,
A
Absolutely.
lot of faith in ourselves, right?
More than what we have. I'm hearing
Indeed.
from folks that, have been in the political game for a while that, it's almost this burnout, and it's this, well, people aren't going to care about this or say so, but people are. Like, I'm out here when we're hearing this on a daily basis, like, people care. We just need to help them participate. Like, we need to be able to make these things more accessible so that they can participate. It's not that people don't want to. So I don't believe that. And I know Tacoma cares and
Oh,
wants to be involved.
I don't either. I think actually, if there is a hidden benefit of the horrible things that are going on at the national level, is that it is activated. So, and I mean, the No Kings is evidence of that. It is activated people's political desires.
Yeah.
But now we just need to let them know how they can actually, other than sort of sanctioned marching,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Which
Protesting is
happened.
great, but there's
It
also
is great. Oh, no, no, not downplaying that at all. But I did hear after the march, one of the sentiments that was expressed is like, okay, everybody got through, everybody, did the thing. We got through it. However many millions of people nationwide came out. That's great. Now what?
now
Well,
what?
that's our job. That now
Mm-hmm.
specifically your job, but also everybody who's involved in helping.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our job now, is
Yeah.
to let people know the now what.
Yeah. And what can we do? We can affect things locally. That's
Right.
what's in our power to do. And so, yes, everything's scary nationally, but it's not going to change unless we start locally and it fans out from there. That is the only way forward.
Well said. Well said. And yeah, just you know, the and I'm like you. I think that I don't believe that people are burnt out and don't want to be involved. I think if let's put it this way, if we got it somehow into everybody's heads that date, August 5th, August 5th, August 5th, August 5th. We showed them how easy it is to participate in the project, A, because people are lazy and busy. Two, that is true. Two, but if we showed them why it's important day to day on a day-to-day level,
Yeah.
I bet you there would be record turnout on this particular August. That's not a general thing. I think in past years you could maybe argue against that. But this year in particular, where everybody is not feeling safe, if we could raise awareness about the date and why it's important, I guarantee you,
Yeah.
record turnout.
But it's going to take all of us. It's absolutely going to take all of us.
Well, we got 6 weeks, so
Let's
there we go. So we were planning on going a little short today, and we ended up going way long.
We're there. Yep.
We're there. Testament to the quality of the candidate and the conversation, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're going to be meeting here. Speaking of consistency, we're going to be doing this weekly, definitely up until the primary and probably far beyond. So
yes, and
I want guests.
Yes, guests. We'll figure out what y'all are wanting to talk about, because this is for y'all. You know, I want to hear what your concerns are, and you know, who do you want to talk to, and what do you want to learn more about, because this is what we're here for, to get folks interested and educated and involved. So
on a slightly more sophisticated level, we hope, than just what you get on your device or through the news.
hope so. Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. So, do you want to bring things to a close, Ms. Palmer, and then we'll.
Absolutely. So again, everyone I saw today at Juneteenth, thank you. It was great running into my community. It was great experiencing that today. I am super happy, and it lifted my spirits. Exactly what I needed. And I want to create that same feeling throughout Tacoma. It is possible, and we just need to do it together. So please go on this journey with me, and let's do it.
August 5th. Thank you.
And yes, be there August 5th.
Thanks so much, and we'll
All
see
right.
everybody next week.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.